Hello everyone, welcome once more to the Golden Talkies podcast. My name is Jamie and I am joined as always by my co-host Duncan.
Your coaster Duncan.
My co-host Duncan. I'm establishing superiority on this podcast.
That's fine. I do often put your name first in the descriptions.
Wow.
Not always, but
you really shouldn't do that.
Well, I mix it up.
Good.
Jamie,
Yeah.
we're now available on Spotify.
Yes.
Currently.
Don't listen there, we'd get no money from it.
We're on Spotify. We're also on Anchor FM. And we will be on, what's the guy's thing called? None of these people are sponsoring us, obviously. But what's the other thing? Oh fuck, he sent it ages ago. God, this is getting embarrassing because
Duncan. Duncan takes care of this.
Oh god, this is horrific.
Wow.
Oh, and he didn't even send it to me. It's in his. He posted it on Facebook. I'm going to his Facebook now. It's coming up. It's coming right up, guys. Don't you worry.
Wow.
We're coming up. Happy Scribe.
There we go.
Yeah, I think we're going to be on that. He said he'd get us on that.
That's very nice of him.
Alongside such podcasts as the Joe Rogan Experience and the Ben Shapiro Show.
What esteemed company.
No. There's there's all sorts of stuff on here. I believe they transcribe the podcast. I'm not sure how that works because
how do they get money from that?
I don't know, and I can't see them sitting through 14 episodes of this and transcribing it. It must be an auto transcribe thing. Anyway, I think we're going to be up on that as well. And we're up on Spotify and Anchor automatically puts you. This does sound like a sponsorship thing. It automatically uploads you to Apple Podcasts and stuff. So I think we just need to wait to get approved by the various companies.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I don't know how the whole thing works. I just did
Ain't that fun?
This guy messaged me. Well, he posted on Facebook that he was making this. He was developing this website with his team, and he was like, "Does anyone have a podcast?" And I commented like, "Oh, I've got a podcast," and that's how we've ended up here on more than just YouTube. So we'll see. Who knows?
Cool.
This could be the big future for us, Jimmy. Do you know how many views all our episodes have currently?
I'm gonna get in total. I'm gonna guess 20.
Well, we have 0 on Anchor. Let me check the YouTube channel now. Have a look. While I do this, do you want to explain what the podcast is? Because I realise we're quite far in now.
Yeah, we've gone quite far. This is Golden Talkies. Every week we try and review a film that came out 50 years ago to that week. Except that we're not doing that this week.
No.
There are some good films that came out this week. There's Wanda with Barbara Logan came out. A film called Wusa as well. Quite well reviewed. Neither of them I could find any legal way to get hold of easily.
That's right.
Wanda was the only one that was kind of possible, but only with a Criterion Collection DVD that would have cost me 30 quid.
So we said
that the budget for this podcast is 5 quid an episode.
And I will
decided no.
I'm happy to put it on the record and say that I said let's just take a week off. But we did also take a week off like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think Jamie, I think you made the right call. So just quickly, before we say what film we're doing, we have 108 views currently on YouTube. So
that's nice.
It'll be interesting to see if that goes up now that we're on other platforms. But anyway, this week we're watching Patton.
Yes, I decided that the best way to make use of this time would be to go back for films that came out in 1970 before we started. So fill in the gaps. And Duncan, the reason why I chose Patton, because you were very mad at me that I chose a film that was so long.
Is it because of its Uruguayan release date, Jamie?
That's close. The Uruguayan release date is next week.
The 24th of August. It's on Monday.
So the day after this episode would come out, which wouldn't fit in normally, but it's at least close.
Yeah.
The actual I chose it above MASH, a much shorter and probably better film, is because this film won the Best Picture Oscar at the 1970s Oscars.
It won many Oscars.
It won many, but it won Best Picture, and so I figured that if we're going to have a complete picture of the year, we probably should watch Patton at some point.
Definitely.
This seemed like a good opportunity to do. So if we miss it another week, if there's another week we have a film, we'll probably watch MASH.
I have a feeling we will be watching MASH at some point. So so we're watching Patton. So you said it came out this year, but it actually premiered in 1969. Are you aware of that?
I didn't know.
December the 4th, 1969. But its general release was in February 1970. And it came out in Uruguay on the 24th of August, so we're going by the Uruguay release date.
Yeah.
In terms of Oscars,
obviously.
In terms of Oscars, it won Best Actor, which the main actor didn't accept. We'll talk about the actors that were in it later. It won Best Picture, it won Best Director, it won Best Screenplay, Best Editing, Best Sound, and Best Art Direction. And it was also nominated for cinematography, visual effects, music, and music original score. So,
big crowd pleaser.
Big crowd pleaser. Indeed.
Yeah, I suppose to sort of start off my thoughts on the film, this is very much the idea of what, like, everyone has like a concrete idea in their head of like what a good film is.
Yeah.
And I feel Patton is very much emblematic of what that idea was culturally in the late 60s, early 70s.
It is. It's an epic. It's a long epic.
Yeah.
It follows one man.
A long epic, portrait of a troubled man, military background, seems to have been for near limitless amounts of money. Hope you like big battles and also people looking very serious.
That's
in
true.
War room.
Jamie?
Yeah?
Do you want the historical context before we jump straight into the film?
Sorry. I was trying to be seamless.
No, it's okay. You could be seamless, but then we would end up awkwardly coming back to this.
Start lurching back. Yeah.
And I feel like let's lurch back now, and not lurch back later. So,
cool.
This is the historical context, by the way, of this week, today, 70 years ago.
Okay.
So I was going to do when the film came out, but given the film came out in 1969, that's sort of not really in playing with it. So, can you guess which song is now in the charts, Jamie?
Is it somehow what's it? Way back again.
Back Home by the England. I wonder if that was in the charts when this film first came out. It wouldn't be, surely. No, it's.
Wait. I actually, over the last week, I actually listened to Back Home by the England.
Oh, okay, go on.
First time. It's a right proper tune.
It
is. It's fine. It's a football tune. It sounds like most of the others. I'm glad everyone liked it so much.
Do you think it's better or worse than Football's Coming Home? He's coming home.
Oh,
he's
easily worse.
Worse, yeah,
like,
I agree.
Football's Coming Home is actually like a song,
kind of song.
and it actually works quite well. If it was about like, I don't know, like a girlfriend who broke up with you or something, then I would be like, that's a perfectly decent, forgettable song. Back Home has no existence beyond being a football chant. Maybe that's a perk in its favor.
It makes you wonder why some teams are better at making music than others. I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm thinking of the Super Bowl Shuffle. Are you aware of the Super Bowl Shuffle, Jimmy?
I'm not aware of the Super Bowl.
Are you aware of the Sex Offender Shuffle?
No.
Okay. Well, the Super Bowl Shuffle was a song that was written by the Chicago Bears in I want to say 1970 something, but maybe 1980 something. Let me see if I can find it. 1985. It was released by the Chicago Bears football team, and they created a group called the Chicago Bears Shuffling Crew, and it's a really awkward video of them all shuffling around, and they're like, "We are the Bears Shuffling Crew, shuffling on down, doing it for you," and then basically they're talking about how they're going to win the Super Bowl, and they did this months before they could have possibly won the Super Bowl, so it was a really big gamble, and then they did win a Super Bowl. So, moral of the story is if there's a big championship you should win, then you should make a song several months prior, and it'll encourage you to work hard. Because imagine how embarrassing it would be if you made a Super Bowl shuffle and then didn't win the Super Bowl. Can you imagine that, Jamie? Jamie? Jamie's back in the room.
Yeah, I fucked up. Sorry.
At what point did you fuck up?
You were talking about the Chicago Shuffle. It was very.
I was still talking about that, but okay. Well, basically, the Chicago Bears team made the song before they knew if they were possibly going to win, and then they went on to win it. And I was just saying how embarrassing it would be if they failed to win after that. Right?
It would be embarrassing. Yes.
And then a few years ago, someone made a parody which was called the Sex Offender Shuffle. Which was like the same video, but it was with sex offenders.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Anyway, how did I get onto that? Oh, Back Home. We're talking about Back Home. We're talking about the charts. What song was in the charts, Jamie?
Something I would have heard of.
It was Lola by the Kinks.
Ah, cool. That's a good one.
Someone I know made a hilarious version of it that was about Corona. Back when it was
Wow.
back. To be fair, back when it was still original to make songs about the coronavirus. It was pretty funny. They were like, Corona.
Yeah, no, I figured it out.
Corona. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Anyway, Lola was in the charts. Time had articles on why westerns are popular.
Oh, cool. What did they say?
It's because the good guys win, apparently. You may remember, Jamie, that I don't have a Time subscription, so I'm unable to read any of the articles beyond the first paragraph.
I hope maybe if people start watching this more, we'll have a budget and we can buy a Time subscription.
We could buy a Time subscription. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? If people start watching this, I mean, you still have to monetize it, though.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
But yeah, it'd be nice to get some listeners. The U.S. Marines had set up a camp for minority youths. Not in that way. I realise that sounds...
Yeah, I presume you mean training camp. There's a missing...
No, like an adventure camp. Like a summer camp.
Yeah, one of those.
So it was a summer camp, and it was for people from like troubled areas, generally minorities, and they got to go fishing and hiking and stuff. But it was led by Marines. I like to think that it would have been a sort of nice way to get back to the community, but I have a sneaking suspicion it's a sort of recruitment strategy to get them early.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, I find that interesting. That's a war film. And there was also a war thing. There was also an article about the end of World War II. But again, I could only read the first the first paragraph, which seemed to be about the Cold War. So I'm not sure exactly how that linked on. Anyway, that was interesting. Something else that was interesting is Life magazine had an article about how Charles Manson's like women, I guess, or his cult people, we're still waiting on the ranch for him to return, even though he was in jail on trial for killing Sharon Tate and others. So that's interesting, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was getting the timeline confused. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I don't think we've talked about Charles Manson. Oh, we did, because we talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
We did, yeah, sorry, I forget, like...
You forget where we are.
No, well, I was looking through films released in the 70s that were great, and then it was like, oh, Chinatown was released in 1974, I want to say.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, like, I forgot that the reason Roman Polanski fled Hollywood. I got the two horrible things involving Roman Polanski mixed up in my head. The chronology of them. But, you know.
When did the second horrible thing happen?
I don't know the exact date. Sometime in the mid-70s, it must be.
Oh, Jack Nicholson's in Chinatown. I've not seen Chinatown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about Jack.
Very good.
Talking about Jack, did you know that Jack Black has a YouTube channel where he plays video games?
Yes, I've known about it for years. I've shown you it on multiple occasions.
Well, I mean, I knew about it, but I was reminded about it yesterday when he uploaded a video of him shaving off his beard. And then I found a delightful video where he was with Tony Hawk, and it was just a cool video.
Oh, yeah.
And it had...
I was going to say Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered is coming out 2 weeks from now, I think.
This video was the first ever announcement of that, Jamie. It's cool. Interesting you bring that up. So yeah, it was with Tony Hawk, and then Tony Hawk says to Jack Black, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but," and obviously he is supposed to tell him this because then he can play it a bit, and he's like, "But we're remastering Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 2," and Jack Black's like, "Yo, that's so cool!" And then they go and they play the remastered one with Jack Black and his kids, and then they go skating, and there's Tony Hawk's there, and Rodney Mullen's there, and Eric Costin's there, and all these like classic, you know, like the most famous skaters ever, all just skating about, and Jack Black's on a skateboard, and it was epic. And cool. I totally forgotten he had a YouTube channel, and it was cool. He just seems like a cool dude. Yeah.
Did you ever play the first any of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games?
No, I was a skate free guy.
Do you think you can play the new ones, or the new old ones, the old new ones?
Probably not. I did actually play one of them. I played one of them on PC, and it was definitely one of the worst ones. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD I played, which is famously bad. However, the play style is still the same as the old ones, and I much prefer the flick stick of Skate. you play with like you flick the sticks as the board would flick instead of pressing buttons, which Tony Hawk's all about. So I don't think I will. I'll wait for Skate 4 to come out. And also there's Skater XL and Session are both out now. So there's other games.
I have a sneaking suspicion they timed the announcement of Skate 4 to coincide with Pro Skater. I feel it's too much of a coincidence.
With Skater XL?
No, with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
I feel like after such a gap, I feel it's a weird coincidence that the two biggest skateboarding franchises are simultaneously making their return.
I think it's because of Skater XL and Session, because they're both very similar games that came out in early access like 2 years ago, and they were both getting their full release this year, and at the same time the two major companies that have been out for it for a good few years now have announced new ones. So I think they're realizing that the market's there, and they're not wanting new people to muscle in their territory. So we'll see. As long as Skateboard's good, I'll be happy. If it's rushed and bad, I'll be very upset, because it could be awesome.
Check in 3 months. People.
Who knows? Apparently, it's very, very far away, Skate 4.
All right. Check in 2 years.
Yeah, whereas Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered are coming out soon. Should we talk about Patton, the 1970 film?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, I like our tangents, but we can start talking about Patton.
I do as well. That's in the description of our thing. I put that it's a tangent-filled podcast.
I saw, so I decided we should live up to the name. But,
we should do. However, I do think it's probably now time, given we've been recording.
We usually go 15 to 20 minutes before we start talking about the actual thing.
I know. Hopefully no one's clicked on this as our first new episode uploaded, expecting a deep analysis on Patton and nothing else, because if so, we failed.
Okay. Patton, General Patton, was a World War II general.
That's right.
For the United States of America.
That's correct.
General Patton was a 4-star general.
3-star general.
The second best type. Well, in reality, he was a 3-star general. In this film, he's a 4-star general.
Pretty sure he's a 3-star general in this film.
He's a 4-star general in this film.
Well, why do all his cars and stuff have 3 stars in it? And his
he gets promoted in the first half hour.
Does he?
Yes.
Wait, no, he was a 4-star. He must have got promoted in real life as well.
Yeah. Well,
no, okay. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay, I was gonna keep doing the stupid voice, but you've broken me out of it, probably for better.
Sorry.
This film, as we know, is released in 1970. The most interesting credit on it is that it is co-written by Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes.
Which is very interesting. I think there's a lot of DNA of his future projects in it.
What did he make, Jamie?
Well, Francis Ford Coppola is a little indie director, but he made the famous film Bram Stoker's Dracula.
That's correct.
Everyone's loved him ever since. A bit of a one-hit wonder. But
who's his nephew, Jamie?
Oh, Nicolas Cage.
I found that out today.
Yeah, he's made such celebrated films as
Face Off.
Yeah, Face Off. And what's the one with Vampire's Kiss? The one with the vampires is really good.
I can't remember. I love Nicolas Cage though. I've seen.
Wow, you can't even remember the name of the vampire film.
I've not seen the vampire film. I've seen
Face
Off,
good.
Con Air,
and yet so
National
bad.
Treasure, The Rock. No. What else have I seen? I think that's it. Oh, Kick-Ass, of course. He's in Kick-Ass. Vampire's Kiss I've not seen, but that is the name of it I'm seeing now. The Frozen Ground.
Yeah.
That's from 2013. I saw that. Snake Eyes. Have I seen that? I think I've seen that. He's awesome. Oh, I did see Snake Eyes. I did see Snake Eyes. Yeah,
I saw him in Wild at Heart recently. He was very good in it.
He really plays into his personality very well.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't collaborated with Lynch more actually, because it seems like they seem like they'd be a very natural fit for each other, and I think it works.
With David Lynch.
Yeah, I think sort of leaning into that sort of over the top style, but with like very, very full on emotional sincerity.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wonder if it would be too much. I wonder if you kind of just need one person like that. And
yeah,
I'm trying to think who David Lynch tends to collaborate with. I mean, obviously.
Well, Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern.
Laura Dern is his main one, and I don't tend to think of her as being massively like that.
That's
so
true.
Maybe
she's quite reserved. Actually, so is Kyle MacLachlan.
Hmm? Yeah, so
I can't
maybe
remember
it's
Patton's also quite reserved.
maybe it's that like fascination. Like I'm sure, like I've seen Laura Dern talk about David Lynch, and she's like absolutely fascinated by him, and he's kind of fascinated by this other world, and that kind of works together. Whereas maybe Lynch and Cage together would just like scrape against each other too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm a
Two
big Nicolas
characters.
Cage dude, and I didn't know that his real name was Nicholas Kim Coppola, and he was the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
I didn't know his middle name was Kim.
Well, there you go. His name's Kim. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Coppola family
Uh-huh.
is a very creative lineage. Um,
Who else is involved?
oh God, you're asking me this.
You brought it
Um,
up.
well, obviously, Sophia Coppola is Francis Ford Coppola's daughter.
Yeah.
But oh, I've lost. I had the Wikipedia page. It was like the family tree of everyone that was in it, and there was like the first people that came over to America from the Italy were all
Uh,
were like
well, I thought
pianists
I was going to
and
ask because, like,
composers and that kind of
obviously,
thing.
a lot of Francis Ford Coppola's family are involved in the movie business, but like the obvious explanation for that is like their father slash uncle is Francis Ford Coppola. So I was wondering if
Yeah,
uh,
his
any of his predecessors had sort of.
his father was a
Oh,
composer, flautist, pianist, and songwriter who
okay.
it looks like who contributed music for Francis's films, but I assume did that before it. Uh,
Hmm.
and his wife is described as the matriarch of the Coppola family. Uh, she's an extra in a bunch of the films. Um, so yeah, but I mean, if you look at the Coppola family tree on Wikipedia, I would say at least half of the people that are in this have Wikipedia pages about how they make films or composers or whatever. His uncle was a opera conductor and composer. His dad was a composer. His brother was an author and a film executive. His sister was an actress. So yeah, like the whole family is very
Involved.
artistic and performing. Yeah, but the most interesting thing was that somehow I did not realize that Nicolas Cage was so closely related. I think I was aware that they were related, but not so closely.
Hmm.
Interesting.
It is
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, Patton was a U.S. Army general in World War II. We've established that. Okay, the film Patton
Yeah.
opens up on a very iconic shot that I didn't realize came from this film, but now I do. Of General Patton against a big fucking flag. I mean,
Mm.
this flag's a real chunker. You've seen big flags before, but wait till you feast your peepers on this one.
About two of the bars are as tall as a man,
Mm-hmm.
and there's God knows how many bars on the American flag.
Stripes, you cretin.
No, Jamie, I just don't respect the flag. I shouldn't say that. That's gonna get us banned. We're never gonna get
Beautiful.
sponsored now.
Uh,
Or is it cool nowadays to not respect the American flag?
I think it's kind of cool. And,
Okay.
if you say, like, by disrespecting it, you're showing your freedom, baby.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. That is
Flag
true. It's
burning.
weird that there's so many rules about the American flag, despite the fact that
It's a
it's
country.
yeah, it's all about freedom.
Anyway,
Anyway,
so Patton makes a little speech here. I say little as, a grand speech. He discussed the American attitude towards war. Says, no bastard ever
never
won by
lost.
dying for his country. He made the other bastard die, and that's how they won.
Oh, you cut out
So
there.
on and so
Bro.
forth. Patton as a film.
Cut out again, bro.
Oh yeah, he does also say the U.S. has never lost the war, which was obviously true at the time, but has a sting of dramatic irony given the period in which the film released.
It's true.
Which is quite, I would say that this film, to discuss Patton's purposes first, because I don't really feel like giving a massive plot summary, though I will try my best. It's a very long film, but as with a great many of these epics, Lawrence of Arabia really is the best touching point.
I've still not seen it, but have you seen
God's
it?
sake. Yeah, of course I've seen Lawrence of Arabia.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, don't. There's a lot of films you've not seen, Jamie.
that's true, but this time I get to lord it over you, and that's a rare,
Okay,
rare position
it
to.
is. It is. I think I've got a box set of DVDs that are called like 20th Century Epics, um,
Yeah.
and that kind of puts me off watching them because I know that there's like 10 hours of film in that box set of free or whatever it is. Um,
Lawrence of Arabia is a very good film. I will go up
yeah,
to.
no, I definitely want to watch it. I think it'd be cool.
Um,
Another epic I want to see is Ben-Hur.
I
Um,
haven't seen Ben-Hur or Doctor Zhivago, which I don't know if that counts as an epic, but just because it's also
yeah, no, I think it does. It's a more recent. I mean, right?
same director as Lawrence of Arabia,
Is it? Who's it directed by?
David Lean.
Uh, David Lean. Who? There was someone. Was it someone from another week that was in Doctor Zhivago or something? I can't remember.
I can't recall either. Um, anyway,
Back to Patton.
yes. So Patton, much like Lawrence of Arabia, is about a portrait of a troubled man, of a complicated wartime leader. So I feel it would be worth discussing who Patton is before we set out.
Yeah.
So Patton is he's a real man's man. He's very blustery, very aggressive.
Yeah.
Believes a great deal in war. He is the spirit of a warrior. Someone calls him at some point in the film.
Yeah.
He lives for battle. He relishes it.
He does. He believes that he's the reincarnation of,
Yes, I was going to say
or not the reincarnation of a specific warrior, but that he's lived many lives of different warriors.
yes. Always war. There's a scene where he goes to the ruins of Carthage and he kneels down.
Yeah.
And he says, 2,000 years ago the Romans fought the Carthaginians here. I was there that day.
I was there that day, yeah. And he knows a lot of poetry and literature and stuff, but it's all based on war. And he knows
Yes.
a lot of history, but all his history is war based.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
He's a very spiritual and sensitive man, but only in relation to war in a very
yeah,
strange and interesting way.
yeah. Which
Uh,
I think is, I mean, I think I think there are people like that. I mean, it's not really a thing nowadays, but if you look at a lot of these old cultures, there's a lot of culture around being a warrior and being you
yes.
know, that
Well, I
kind of
suppose
thing.
what the film, or at least characters around Patton say a lot of the time, is that he's an anachronism. He is, I think someone says, the 16th century man.
Yes, yeah, they do.
So he's sort of the spirit of those tribal times is
Yeah,
embodied in him.
the tribal times of the 1600s, exactly.
Well,
1500s. Fuck.
what are countries if not tribes?
It's
Uh,
true. It's true.
as he walks among us today. I'm trying to find the words to express what sort of like default pattern is in terms of like he's very no nonsense. He's
Yeah,
very friendly, but sort of in a kind of annoying way.
he
Uh,
is. He's got a lot of respect for his enemy.
yeah,
In a weird way where he sees the battle as honorable, so he wants to absolutely slaughter them, but then he has utmost respect for the effort that they put in and stuff.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is which is something a bit different
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
film.
I'm just trying to figure out the ways to say his main deal, his main attitude
Yeah.
towards lust for battle, shall we say, but also an
Yeah.
expectation as men will share that lust,
Yeah.
talent for sharing it, but also an sort of complete lack of empathy for those who don't.
Yes.
One thing the
Exactly.
film does in a way which I find quite interesting is that a lot of the times it'll sort of pepper in Patton's dialogue that he's doing quite terrible things, but just sort of not comment on it in a way. There's like one bit where after he's conquered an Italian city where he says like, "My Italian prisoners were complaining that they don't have latrines. I had to show them how to use a latrine."
Yeah.
And then like it's never commented on again, which I quite like actually. I think it's very much a film where it shows you this character, and the film is, I wouldn't doesn't go too harsh in terms of it's a very critical film of him, but it's not. It doesn't set out to demonize him, but it doesn't set out to lionize him either, which I think is the danger of these types of films.
Yeah.
It tries to paint a nuanced portrait, and I think it succeeds quite well.
It does quite well, definitely. Yeah, you understand where he's coming from and why he makes the decisions he does, but it doesn't always suggest that's the right thing to do or
Yeah.
anything like that.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, maybe just to stay at the outset that I think Patton's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I think that's the thing about this film is that I think that as an intelligent or empathetic person, one would come away from this film understanding that it's trying to paint Patton as a deeply flawed person, but one with like unique talent, or for the era that he was in.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
But I also can very easily imagine that someone who I would dislike very much would walk away from this film and think, "Wow, wasn't that Patton character great?" In a very completely uncritical way. Do you know? What I mean?
I mean, I think he's presented as a dick, but one that has that is a dick for the right reasons.
See, that's the thing. I was wondering if our opinions on this would differ a bit, but I think he's a dick but gets results. It's fair.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the film necessarily sympathizes with him. But what I was going to say, just to defend that point I made, is that do you know whose favorite film this is?
No idea.
Tricky Dicky, Richard Nixon himself. A wonderful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So just to.
I thought Tricky Dicky was David Cameron.
No. Oh, there's plenty. The Tricky Dicky lives forever. But,
is Tricky Dicky not what that Labour guy called David Cameron and he got kicked out? Yeah.
Which is weird because Dicky is not a nickname for David.
No, but it is quite a funny video.
Yeah. But just to reiterate my point that I definitely think that someone could emerge from that film. If someone like Patton, but just a regular schlub went into that film, they could emerge from it not having absorbed any of the criticism at all and just gone, yeah, that film really showed how great he was. Isn't it nice how he won? But I don't know. I think that's kind of nice. I think these things can be allowed to be nuanced. I don't know if you need to always make your films for the stupidest audience goer.
No. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. I think. It kind of would work. You don't have to see you can watch the film and not get the nuances and the little bits, but also you can.
Yeah, well.
Is that what you were saying?
What I'm trying to say is that I think, obviously, we talked about this on the podcast before, but also just in discourse in general, that there is obviously. We can talk a lot about whether films glorify certain behavior or if they fail to condemn it a lot. And I think this film walks the fine line of that. It doesn't super explicitly condemn Patton's behavior. In that I think, to the extent that I think if someone was watching without paying too much attention, they would perhaps not realize it was being critiqued at all. But I think it is nuanced enough to hold him accountable and to not condone the behavior. I think a lesser film would go, when Patton, for example, said that he doesn't want any cowards in his unit. When facing soldiers who have been shell shocked and basically been mentally scarred for life, I think a lesser film would sort of side with him, or at least try to paint that in a noble light. Whereas the film genuinely does show that as an act of violence and complete and utter monstrous lack of empathy on his part.
Yeah.
I think it's a better film for being able to take that sort of nuanced approach.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I think he could have also gone the other way completely, and just said that he would. Wait, so you're saying it could have? You said it could have showed that as correct, the correct thing to do, and it also could have gone the other way and shown it as completely the wrong thing to do, or
it was the wrong thing to do.
No, it does show it as the wrong thing to do, but the film explains why he did it. And I feel like he could have just not explained why he did it and just been like he's a horrible person.
Well, I think the film doesn't let him get away with his explanations for why he did it. I think it holds him accountable for them.
Yeah, but you can see the kind of man that he is, and
you can see how in Patton's
he justifies it. You can see how he justifies it. Is that a better way of putting it?
You can see how with Patton's belief system there is no room for how he conceives of the world for someone to have a mental failing of any kind. He can only really understand it in very simple terms, because that's ultimately how he views the world.
Yeah.
So
whereas they could have easily just not shown that and just been like, he's a dick.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
For no reason.
But, isn't it nice that films make us think?
There's nothing I would like to be doing more at 11:45 on a Saturday night than thinking, Jamie.
Ooh. Yeah, I should say we'll come back to this when it comes up, actually, because we're probably getting a little confused, and also I should have time to think of my argument.
Okay.
So Patton begins in Tunisia in 1943. Patton...
Oh my God, we're only there. I'm looking at the bit of paper I've got, Jimmy, and we're now on line 3 of probably about 100 things that I've written down.
Baby, this is the real megasode.
My third line is that we're now in Tunisia 1943.
All right. Well, I promise to God, to both listeners and to you, I won't spend as long on the plot summary as I usually do. I'll just to paint a picture.
Yeah.
So Tunisia 1943, Patton takes over command. He's very successful there, but he's very annoyed at the British general Montgomery, who is taking a lot of the credit and not really supporting him in the way that he's supposed to do.
Yeah, and there's a bit around here where I think they say that they've saved an area for Montgomery to take. That might be later on, but I think it's during the Africa bit. And he's like, "What? That's ridiculous. This is war, not a glory hunting thing." And then he goes and takes the place, which starts his rivalry with Montgomery.
Yeah, I suppose our introduction, not our second introduction, as it were, to Patton, is that he takes over the army base from whoever the prior general was. Mm-hmm. And it's whipped up into shape. We see Patton's very, very into military discipline. Very annoyed that people haven't been wearing their helmets, including people like the chef.
And the doctor.
And the doctor, yes. The doctor actually says that he can't, do his job with his helmet on because he is for a stethoscope, and Patton doesn't accept that as an excuse.
You said you can cut a hole in your helmet.
Yes. One of the boys in the barracks has one of those 40s pin-ups, and he takes it down. He says, "This isn't a bordello." So we sort of see Patton very much in love with the spirit of war, which I think is the correct phrase to use.
Yeah.
War as an experience.
And the importance of discipline and stuff, which is something that we saw in Too Late the Hero, if you remember back to episode 2. And the importance that Marcus Brody puts on discipline and following orders and stuff. And I think you see a very similar kind of character thing with Patton, where he views the... I mean, it is the sort of military view, is that the reason that you do so much drill and that your uniform should be perfect is because you need to be trusted to do what you're told and do what you need to do. So that's kind of the idea that he's bringing in, is that this is not a casual holiday and that you should be ready at all times.
True, but I think the film is at least a little critical of it, given that the examples it chooses are two really impractical ones, with the chef and the doctor.
With the doctor, I mean, the chef not so much. The chef I think makes sense, but yeah, the doctor definitely is a bit impractical.
Yeah, I think it's trying to show that he likes the imagery of war even beyond the point of practicality or necessity.
Well, this is true because he talks about designing uniforms a couple times in the film.
Yes, that's true.
And
his
he
design
talks about
for a uniform involves a solid gold football helmet.
Exactly, which the army said would get them spotted. So yeah, I think there is an element of that idea of the look of war, the that kind of thing. That kind of reminds me of Jojo Rabbit. The guy that designs his own uniform.
Yeah.
In Jojo Rabbit, like the gay Nazi one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
actually, in a way, I suppose, is Patton anything more than just a grown-up JoJo, except for a different side, if you know what I mean?
That's true, actually.
I mean, he's very much in love with the romance of being a soldier. I suppose the thing about Patton, which we might as well mention now, I don't know when it really comes up, is that Patton is very uninterested in politics, and thus almost completely uninterested in the actual ideology of the war he's fighting.
Yeah, I mean, for example,
for
we're skipping right ahead, but right at the end, he wants to go to war with the Russians, and
yes.
he says, "Oh, don't worry, the guy says, "But we're not at war with the Russians. We just fought with them. We're at peace." And Montgomery says, "Don't worry, I'll mobilize the Germans against them. I'll start a war in a week, and I'll make them think it was their idea." Which kind of shows that he's got no regard for that idea of politics and trying to.
I was about to say, Patton's only political opinion, which sort of becomes more prominent in the latter half of the film, is that he really hates the Russians.
Yeah.
Presumably, I can't imagine Patton's a big fan of communism. I can't imagine it would accord with his ideology. He's also presented as a smart person, so I'm sure he would also realize, the extent of the threat.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a potential that it was overemphasized in the film because of the stuff at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
The film came out. I mean, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page right now, and there is stuff about him making aggressive statements towards the Soviet Union and all that kind of stuff. So it does sound like he did hold those views. But I think it is important to question exactly how accurate those things are.
I suppose, not to be a big pedant, all American films are lies thing, but one thing I did notice is that the role of the Russians in actually taking Berlin is very, very minimized in the film.
Yeah.
It's more just sort of, and also the Russians were there.
Yeah. I mean, they are shown celebrating the win, and Patton's definitely not happy that they've got there first. I mean, I think you could explain it as the whole film is really about the American army. Yeah, you don't really see many British soldiers either, but it is true. You can definitely see that there's not much about the Russians taking Berlin.
They weren't in. The filmmakers weren't in any rush to show the Russian contribution to the war, which
definitely not
in the period of the time.
Definitely not. And the other thing about Patton, as well as what you just said about him not liking politics, is that he also doesn't really get the media. Because several times in the film he says things that are picked up by reporters and make it into the newspaper, and that gets him a lot of bad press. Or gets into the newsreels, which are a very nice little bit of this film, where it kind of cuts off from the main action, which is widescreen color, into the classic little 4x3 black and white newsreels, which I quite like.
Yeah, it is nice.
It was quite nice. It was kind of like Citizen Kane.
Of course. The only film that matters.
The only film with newsreels.
But so the reason I was bringing up, so Patton doesn't care about Allied politics in particular. So there's always this tension between the US and the British, and Patton just doesn't respect it at all. Just sort of kind of does what he wants, and is very open with the fact that he's just kind of annoyed that he's not getting to do what he wants to. So Patton has a battle against what he thinks is Ernst Rommel.
Who is shown as his rival in this film.
At Tunisia. And he wins, which is very nice for him. It turns out Rommel was, away sick that day. He had a note from his mum. So, he's a bit sad about that, but, he still beat him in a way.
Yeah, well, the other people are saying that if you beat his orders, you beat him, and Patton sort of goes, well, but not really. And he clearly, I mean, he talks before this battle. He talks about how in the ideal world, he looks out over the desert and he says, in the ideal world, I would just call Rommel up, and he'd roll up in his tank over there, and I'd be in my tank over here, and we'd have a battle mano on mano, and that would decide who wins the war.
Well, I suppose one of the slightly strange things about Patton's ideology in the film is that obviously he's very into his luster battle and all that, but by the time of World War II, generals don't actually do much fighting.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's a point where hilariously he's talking to a guy from the RAF, and the guy said they're talking about how the RAF guy says that they have air supremacy and they'll never see any German planes. And then hilariously, at that exact moment, some German planes fly over and start bombing them. Yeah. And Patton's response, rather than diving under the table, is to say, well, we were discussing air supremacy, and then he jumps out the window and starts firing at the planes with his pistol. So clearly he yearns for battle, and he takes any opportunity for him personally to be involved in battle, even though, as you say, he's a general, he's not supposed to be.
Well, I think most of what he does in the film is, roll around in an army jeep and talk to people.
Exactly. I mean,
you can count the amount of times in the film that he actually shoots a gun, I think, on 3 fingers.
You can, but he also is not afraid of. I mean, he's not deliberately putting himself in battles, but he's not afraid at all. So I'm thinking the bit later on where he hears that there's some tanks that are stuck on one side of a river and unable to cross. So he drives across the river in his jeep and then surprises them by being on the other side of the river already. And he says, "Come on, guys, what are you doing? Get across here. There's only 3 foot of water."
Yeah.
And meanwhile, there's explosions going off around him and stuff. So I think...
No, I'm not saying the film portrays him as a hypocrite. I'm just saying that he's in love with an ideology that doesn't actually apply to his own era at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think I agree. The fact that he's getting himself in these situations is proof that he wishes that that era was still around. Yeah.
I mean, as a general, that would objectively be a bad idea.
Of course.
Front lines anyway.
Of course.
But
I mean, that's what he yearns for. I guess if he wasn't a general, he probably wouldn't be in the war because he was 6 years old.
So yeah, that's sort of the Tunisia chapter of the film in broad. A couple more things that I feel ought to be brought up now. General Patton visits the hospital when he's doing his first rounds and cleaning the place up. This is sort of the first time that we see he's actually kind of a shitter. So Patton has a very particular attitude towards military hospitals that will be more explored later. But he says in this particular hospital that he learns that a lot of the men have self-inflicted wounds, and he says that they can't be treated with the others; they have to be treated separately. He says this with scorn. And then he says to the doctor in advance that no battle fatigue will happen in his unit. He doesn't believe in it. It's cowardice. It's just snowflake mumbo jumbo. They just need to get back out there. So yeah, I suppose something that is true of both the real General Patton and the Patton in this film is that he just does not believe in mental illness or psychological trauma at all.
Yeah. Which is something you see in a lot of people still nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, not a very nice man in that regard. And it's a flaw that the film will eventually take him to task for.
Yeah.
Other than that, what was I going to say? Oh yes, a soldier dies during the Tunisian battle. It's a sort of minor officer who is being in the background of most of the scenes, contributed to the word here or there. Yeah. And Patton's again very sensitive at his funeral. He sort of speaks some poetry. I think he kisses him as he's lowered into the casket, and he's genuinely sad that there's no wood for a coffin, and he can't have a sort of 12-gun salute. That'll give away their position. There's a genuine sorrow for
definitely
the fallen soldier. Anything else from this particular bit of the film?
Anything else from this film? There's quite a lot actually left.
Yeah, there's a lot left. I was going to do it one bit at a time because the film's very conveniently divided into 3 major scenes.
I have already jumped about a lot, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, Patton sleeps in his uniform, which I found quite funny.
Does he? I didn't even notice that. That is pretty funny.
Oh yeah, he's sleeping in his 4-poster bed. Yeah, we talked about Patton's belief in reincarnation, obviously, and it is just important to note he's very, very into it.
Yeah.
Truly believes it. We cut to a scene in the Nazi headquarters where they're discussing him, and one of them calls Patton a 16th century man, which I brought up before, and compares him to Don Quixote. Which I thought was a really apt comparison when I was watching the film. I was trying to figure out what he reminded me of, and it turned out that was it.
Cool.
Yeah. He really is a Don Quixote boy, but one with actual talent, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
I like Don Quixote. Good character.
He's also described many times as a prima donna.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not. Oh wait, prima donna is a character actually, isn't she?
Hmm?
Is prima donna
A prima donna is a leading female singer in an opera company.
That's right. But it's the Commedia dell'arte, so she might be a character.
I don't know. Anyway, a prima donna is
yeah,
sort of.
But he's got a flair for the.
How would you describe a prima donna? I don't know.
All she ever wanted was the world.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, he's a drama queen. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that doesn't really mean the same thing, I would say.
Ah.
I mean, I think they're different things, right? I don't think he's a drama queen.
I would say prima donna means like you're very fussy and vain.
Yeah, but drama queen means that you make up things or make things seem grander than they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you don't think he does.
The latter of that, I'd say, is part of a prima donna.
Right. Well, anyway, he's a prima donna. He's not a drama queen, in my humble opinion. Right.
So another thing, this is the second part of this film will involve an invasion of Italy. And they discuss whether or not he's going to invade Sicily or Sardinia. But the German officer says that Patton will definitely invade Sicily because that's how the Athenians did it, and he's very into military history.
This is a German officer that's been assigned to research him. So
yes.
So several times in the film it cuts to these German officers that are talking about their strategy and what Patton might do in a bunker, and one of them has been assigned to research him, and all the officers are saying, "Oh, they're going to invade Sardinia," and then he says, "No, he's a big fan of military history. Who was it, Athenians?"
Yeah, I think
so. Invaded Sicily, so that's what he'll do. And sure enough, it then cuts to Patton saying, "The Athenians invaded Sicily. That's what we're going to do." So
yeah. They got him. You know?
They read him like a book.
Yeah.
So
Ike, which I didn't know until this film, is what they called Eisenhower. Not Eisenhower. No, Eisenhower. Yeah, in those days, or any time. Sorry. Has really annoyed Patton because he's letting Montgomery get the cool part of the invasion plan. Patton says Ike's forgotten to put America first. He's forgotten to think of it as America, not an ally.
Yeah, he thinks about it as an allied invasion, not an American invasion, which is quite an interesting way to look at it.
Disgusting.
The guy that plays Montgomery looks quite a lot like Montgomery, would you say?
I don't know what Montgomery looked like.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, nerd. I was too busy getting laid.
While you were studying the army generals, I was studying the shagging.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
The real way you can tell Patton's a dick is because he's very interested in military history, which is the biggest red flag of any human being.
The actors look quite a lot like the people they're playing, actually.
Yeah.
Pretty well. Yeah.
I think most of the actors in this film, I don't think, do a super great job, other than the guy playing Patton, I would say. I mean, not that they're bad; it's just that they're there.
Yeah, they're not particularly. I looked up the cast, and other than Patton, they're not particularly famous. The guy that played Montgomery was the prison guard in The Clockwork Orange.
Cool.
That was the most famous one I could find. So it kind of looks like they
chose them.
They chose good actors, but perhaps chose ones that fitted the specific parts better and looked like the famous people or whatever. The guy who played Rommel was a German actor who hasn't been anything I recognise. So yeah.
I suppose when you're talking about like these films which are very hyper focused on one character in particular, there's never going to be any meaty roles for anyone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just kind of work.
Occasionally there might be two big people, but it's definitely a character piece where they've got a big actor to play that, and then surrounded him with others. Yeah.
Yeah, other players.
Yeah.
So we get our battle in Sicily. Patton completely disobeys orders. Just pretends to not have gotten the telegram telling him to stop moving, because Montgomery caught into trouble, and Patton thinks he can overtake him if he just doesn't do what he's told to.
Yeah, so he wants to take the city of Mazzino in Sicily and then pull round to top, because they're all going for Palermo, which is like the main place to get, and Montgomery's been stopped. There's another US army that's in the middle in the mountains, sort of moving very slowly, and then Patton forces his way round to the left side of the island and up and then through to Palermo, and ignores orders, as you say, to do so.
Yeah, so this kicks off the part of the film which I like, because I love it when films are very mean. And this part of the film is very critical towards Patton.
Yeah.
So we start with our battle in Sicily. The first thing that we see is...
Jimmy?
Sorry.
Radio silence.
Yeah, never.
What were you playing at?
I was looking at my notes. Patton, tries to rile up his boys. He says that he does this because he loves it.
Yeah.
So one thing we see is that on the bridge, his troops are trying to transport some cargo across, and it's been paused because there are two donkeys pulling stuff on the bridge, and they're like, we can't go. There's two asses in the way, which funny wordplay. So Patton, without missing a beat, shoots the donkeys in cold blood.
Yep. And then
tosses them off the bridge.
Tells them to toss them off the bridge, and then go. Yeah.
In a really quite nasty act of animal cruelty and violence. We then see the actual battle, which is very bloody and dramatic. A lot of explosions everywhere. We see that the soldiers, there's one who are beginning to get very annoyed about this in their own way. One of them says the nice line, "Our blood, his guts," and that they're paying the price for his hubris, as it were, or at least his passion, which I think is quite interesting. I mean, obviously, General Patton does a lot of incredibly reckless things throughout this film, and almost all of them are at the expense of his men. Even his finest hour, I think, is somewhat tainted by it in the film, although it is portrayed in a somewhat positive light.
His finest hour being...
I was going to say when he invades Berlin, but his master plan for that involves what every other general thinks is a disgusting abuse of his men.
True.
Someone brings up how's the common soldier supposed to fare, and he says that he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
Then we get to sort of the aftermath of the battle. Patton's side wins, but he sort of goes into a tent to look at the injured. And, again, in fairness, not in fairness, just, he says, he goes around them very sensitively, he, listens to their injuries, says prayers for them, does them properly.
He gives them purple hearts.
Yeah, there's one guy who's blind, and Patton, just whispers in his ear.
Yeah, and you don't know what he says.
Yeah, we never know what he says, but, that's nice.
Which is kind of nice. Kind of nice.
And then we see one guy in the corner who's very deeply shell-shocked, just crying uncontrollably, not able to get a handle on himself. And Patton is, because as we know, he doesn't believe in this stuff, is unbelievably outraged that he's allowed to sit with the men who have got physical injuries. He starts yelling at everyone. He starts yelling at the doctors, asking why he was allowed in. He calls the man a coward. He says that he should be shot for insubordination.
Yeah, he says, "I'm going to shoot you right here."
Yeah, which is hypocrisy. And then he slaps him quite hard 2 times, very clearly out of anger, which I feel is an important thing to note, given what he'll say later.
Yeah.
And so, scene ends, scandal, shock horror, as Patton has now assaulted one of his own men, who has obviously suffered for his sake.
Yeah.
So this kicks off a big scandal back home. So he's...
I think this is the first newsreel, isn't it?
No, I think
maybe
because he sees a cartoon of himself, and that really annoys him.
Oh, it's a cartoon. You're right. Yeah, sorry, no.
It's off the record as well. That's the thing. But he's lost favor quickly. So he has to do...
Yeah, so a cartoonist is drawing him kicking one of his own soldiers with a swastika in his boot, which
and he's only angry. Yeah, just the swastika.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
And the fact that the boot's made of iron, I think he's angry about as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he's still not. Patton is never really admits fault in this matter. He really hates that he's being taken to task for it, but he doesn't think he was wrong. And sort of, he was forced to make a public apology to both the soldier in question, the soldier's family, and the entire army under his command. And later that he wrote to the family that he thought their son should have been shot as his apology. And then his apology to the army is very stilted and is mostly him justifying his actions by saying that he thought that this would help him gain his self-respect if he slapped him.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Like so I mean, it's at this point that you kind of see how he's how he kind of explains it to himself, where he's like he almost says he can understand why the man's a coward, but all he needs to do is realize what he's done and get some self-respect back, and the best way to do that is to slap him. That's
there's a very nice bit with the apology. I've forgotten the actor's name again, but but the way he does it is that it's like, I'd like to offer this, and then he pauses for a very long time, and he says explanation and this apology, like just absolutely hesitating to the last possible second to actually apologize as part of this. Like the vast majority of it is him just trying to. I'm not even sure that he's explaining it to himself. I genuinely think he's just explaining it to his men. Although it's definitely up for interpretation, so I'm not going to say that's wrong.
Yeah, no, I do think it's explained to his men, but I think I don't necessarily think that that's exactly how he thinks, but I think it does give an insight into his sort of views on why someone might act like that. Like I'm not saying that he genuinely thinks that by slapping that specific man he was getting his self-respect back, but it shows that I think that is how he believes cowardice is. It's just that you've kind of lost some respect for yourself, and
I mean, he certainly thinks of it as a personal failing.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's what you see there.
Yeah, I mean that's the way he frames the discussion. He doesn't consider it in any other light, even when trying to explain himself. So we find, so he's captured the city, Palermo, is it? The British have got there at the same time. And he and Montgomery have a terse exchange, during which there are two parades going on. They both play Stars and Stripes and Scotland the Brave at the exact same time, which sounds horrible, as one would expect, which is, a nice little bit of a reflecting character dynamic. Because you see that they're discordant. It's quite subtle.
Quite subtle.
Yes. But Patton's down in the dumps. He wanted command of the armies over Europe because D-Day is beckoning, and he's been passed over for it in favor of his immediate subordinate, Bradley, who's not as brilliant as Patton, but a good boy. He does his work on time.
Yeah.
So Patton's very sad. He says,
very sad.
All this over one measly slap. Again, never really accepting the gravity of what he did, but regardless, feeling very sorry for himself.
He is, yeah.
And then we get to intermission.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I love intermission.
I like intermissions as well. You don't get them in a lot of films.
It was much worse once they got rid of intermissions, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't play a song during the intermission though, and that's very disappointing.
A song starts up towards the end of it.
Yeah, that's just to let you know to get out of the bathroom.
You're actually you've put the intermission too late, by the way.
Oh, have I?
No, you haven't. No.
Yeah, don't doubt my abilities.
There's a different speech. There's a different speech after the intermission that I confused with the speech before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on. Go on, son.
Okay, we're in Corsica now. Some time has passed. Probably a few months because it's only 1944.
Yeah.
General Patton is still around, baby, but he's doing unimportant stuff. He continues to insist that the Yellow Rat should have been shot, but he's now got men the men are still loyal to him. They don't want to ride with anyone else, but he feels he's, this is where he's sort of been put away for the rest of the war. He's just kind of here so he won't bother anyone.
Yeah.
He's goes to talk to in an English village. Sorry, no, he's brought up to London for some mysterious reason. He thinks just to, sit there. And as part of this, I'm getting the order confused. Yeah, as part of this, he's told that he's going to run a decoy army during D-Day. As we all know, that's obviously a very important part of the plan. And he sort of goes up to speak in front of this town hall of a meeting of women. I guess they'd be, staying at home because not staying at home. Just like it's an all-female audience, I assume, because that's the makeup of Britain.
The men are fighting.
Yeah, the men fighting the war. There's a very nice, genuinely pathetic scene where General Patton has a new dog, and he says he's called William the Conqueror because he's brave. And then his tiny dog barks at it, and he whimpers, and he says, "You're a coward," to the dog. Which I thought
called Willie now.
Both quite funny, genuinely quite sad in its own way.
It's a really effective way of sort of showing how he thinks or confirming how he thinks, and it is quite funny when he's like, "You're called Willie now. You're not William." Yeah.
Even when he starts growing to like the dog, he continues to just call it Willie.
Yeah.
But he talks in front of the village hall, and he's just doing the pleasantries and stuff. And at one point he says he believes in he does little gags about all the Americans would be jealous of how beautiful you are and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's what's going to end the war early, because all the American women are going to get jealous and end the war, so our men go back home.
Yeah, solid patter.
Makes a nice little speech with some good patter in it. But Jamie, what does he forget to do?
Well, you see, at one point he says that he's a great believer in American and British supremacy, which is all world supremacy, I should say, which is already quite a dodgy opinion to state. But from the perspective of the time, he was supposed to say, or he should have said, British, American, and Russian world.
Oh, of course he should have done. That was so silly of him.
Exactly. So now he's in a heap of trouble because he's made anti-Russian statements. This is all supposed to be off the record. But he's really scuppered himself during a time when he was very vulnerable anyway. Strangely, this one, I think he is genuinely very remorseful about it. Patton's own analysis of his flaws, he believes that his biggest flaw is that he can't shut up. Which, is true, and is definitely exemplified in that scene. But he's genuinely really sad. He's sad about this. He really feels that he's fucked up, unprovoked. And that the world's out to get him. Patton's a very big believer in God. He's a very pious man. Again, always in a slightly strange way. There's a scene, I think, a little later where he says to lead the men in a prayer, but then he asks God to smite their enemies and destroy them. So again, even in this particular fashion, whilst he is a very religious man, he still does it in a very violent way.
I think all of his things are kind of violent.
That's his life.
Yeah.
But he's because he's a pious man, he's beginning to feel at this point that God is out to get him, which understandably causes him a lot of emotional distress. But it turns out that his old pal Bradley wants to go see him in France.
That's right.
So he hops off on a plane with the other spare parts, as he says morosely, go see him. And he and Bradley have a lovely little talk in Bradley's shed/office. And Bradley says he's got a plan for D-Day. But, he wants Patton to have a look at it. And Patton's like, but, you need a screw-up old general to lead it. And he goes, Ike said the exact same thing. But during the scene... No, actually, it's a little after this. But we discover that Bradley has very mixed feelings towards Patton, having served under him for so long. It becomes very clear that whilst Eisenhower is a big fan of Patton, no one else really is. Bradley in particular says that if he had been Patton's superior officer at Sicily, he would have had him fired. And that he doesn't really trust him, even though he does acknowledge his talent. He thinks he's too much of a loose cannon to really have around in any sort of military. But Patton gets going on his part of D-Day, and he's extremely good at it. Much better than anyone sort of expected.
Uh-huh.
So he barrels through, and then Bradley says, "Okay, Patton, you've done your bit.
Yeah.
We need to cut off supplies of gasoline for you now, because we need to support Montgomery, who's doing other stuff."
Oh, Patton's old enemy.
Yeah, and Patton doesn't respond to this very well. He's very, very mad.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I can do. He says he's at the perfect moment, the perfect instrument. He could definitely take Berlin if he just had the supplies.
Yeah.
And I've been quite harsh on Patton throughout this discussion, so I should make it very clear that the film does consistently portray him as very talented at being a military officer. He is genuinely very good at what he does.
Yeah.
So there's no real reason the film gives us to doubt Patton's claims that he could make it to Berlin if he wanted to.
Uh-huh.
But regardless, he's hung up high and dry. But Patton's thinking a bit ahead, and he thinks that despite the fact that there's no logical reason the Germans would do it, because it's winter and they don't have any supplies, he thinks they're going to plan one last big offensive. So he sort of maneuvers his troops in anticipation of that.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out he's right, and that does happen. So he has one last big meeting with the generals, and they're all like, "We need someone to relieve this army. They're being completely overwhelmed. Does anyone have troops that can get there in like a week?"
Yeah.
I can get them there in 2 days. And they go, "Patton, that's ridiculous. Your men have no food and it's cold. You'll be running them dry." And Patton says, "They're my men. They'll do what I tell them to. It's not because they like me." And then, the men do that. They go about it with a smile on his face. They very genuinely seem to like him.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes up the snowy mountain pass. Last week I talked about how I like snowy cowboys. I like snowy armies too. Snow, it's cool.
Snow is cool. And
it's very
this
cool.
is where he prays for good weather.
Yes, that's the prayer, exactly.
Yeah. So it's quite well done actually, because he's praying for the good weather, and then that's shown over the images of people getting blown up and shot and killed and stuff.
Yes.
And there's no noise of any of those videos. It's just him praying, which I quite liked. It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, the film treats. I don't know about Coppola's or the director's own religious beliefs, but the film treats Patton's faith very seriously. Does buy into it as much as he does. I don't think it ever really. Whilst you can definitely look at it as odd, I don't think the film ever tries to show that Patton's a hypocrite or a pious man. Even though one could obviously make the argument that he would be. Depending on one's own positions on military and religion.
Yeah.
But like I say, Patton's Patton's a very spiritual person in a way which is quite peculiar, but makes sense as an individual who is so emotionally resonant with the idea of warfare. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting film. He's a very interesting man, the character they created. But this
Indeed.
is the hour. They win.
They win.
Not to spoil the ending of World War II for anyone, but that's what happens.
He wins, and then you see all the Nazis killing themselves and burning all the papers.
Yeah.
And they're like, "God, that goddamn Patton, he really showed us."
Exactly.
And I think that's true. I think the German high command had a lot of respect for Patton in the same way that he had a lot of respect for them.
Well, I think we might as well talk about this now, because it seems that the sort of opinion of Patton in real life was that Eisenhower did quite like him, although he definitely thought of him not as a man for a grand strategy, but just like if you gave him a simple instruction, he would do it better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It does seem that the British and French really fucking hated him.
Yeah.
Or at least thought he was an idiot. That Hitler seems to respect him. I think there's a quote where it's like apparently he called him a damned cowboy general.
That seems like something Hitler would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, very unpopular outside of America in real life. I suppose that would make sense with the character in the film. He's the American's American, which of course means he would be repellent to anyone else.
That's true.
But yeah.
So yeah, they win the war. and then they are partying in Berlin, but the Russians are the ones that are really partying because they're the ones that took it first, of course. And whilst the film doesn't show them taking it, it does show them partying, and it shows all the Americans sitting looking very grumpy. And then after they've partied a bit, the Russian general talks to his translator, and the translator says, this Russian's inviting you for a drink to celebrate the war. And Patton says, you could tell him he's a son of a bitch and he can go fuck himself, or whatever it is. And then the guy says, I'm not translating that. And then he translates it to the Russian guy, and then the Russian guy says something back, and then the translator says, he also says you're a son of a bitch. And then Patton says, well, let's drink one son of a bitch to another then. And then they have a nice little drink, and it's very weird that they're shown to hate each other so much, but also they drink together.
Yeah, it's quite nice. I've definitely seen that scene somewhere before, and it was bothering me intensely.
Was it in Patton? 1970 film?
The film I was watching right then? No.
Yeah.
Sometime before that. It's really been bugging at me ever since I've seen it. Because I've not seen, other than the first scene with the flag, which I'm sure I've seen, in like a clip or something. I've definitely not seen any of the rest of this film yet. I've definitely seen that exact scene.
Who knows? It feels like a stereotype. It feels like it could be a stereotype film.
No, I've definitely seen that exact. Anyway. Patton, this sort of begins the, I would say, epilogue of the film.
Yeah.
Which is sort of Patton in a world without war.
Yeah. And this is where he says the thing I was talking about earlier, where he says, "I can go to war with the Russians, guys. I can fight the Russians, and I'll make it think that they did it." And then everyone says, "No, the war's over. We're recovering." And he's going, "No, we're getting all the Germans to give all the weapons in and stuff. We should be using them to fight the Russians." And everyone's like, "Patton, calm down. The war's over. We've won. It's all good." And and then he foreshadows a bit, and he says that we're going to end up fighting the Russians anyway. Whether he actually said that or whether that's a 1970s edition, who knows? But yeah,
I think it's a very good microcosm of his character, because
it is.
It's a completely insane thing to say at the time. It's very clearly Patton sort of desperately pleading with reality at large to let him return to the one environment in which he is comfortable.
Yeah.
At what would be enormous human cost, and yet he is right.
He is right. He's predicted what's going to happen, and
yeah,
I think it's also interesting in that it answers the question that is both literally and sort of rhetorically asked throughout the film, which is what's he going to do when the war is over? A lot of people actually say he needs war and what's going to happen, and I think even without those questions, you still, as the audience, imagine it, and this kind of shows you for a brief, however long it is, 10 minutes in this sort of epilogue or the ending, you kind of see what he's like without the war.
Yeah. Yeah, he desperately desires more, and yet
he almost gets killed by a
I'd say there's a runaway ox cart, which is quite strange in its own way, because I think the point of that scene, you might disagree, is that I think it shows Patton becoming aware of his own mortality for the first time, but very paradoxically, as soon as the war is actually over.
Yeah.
As a sort of moment of vulnerability, which is quite strange in its own way.
And of course, he did die in quite a sad way.
I don't know how he died, but it was very soon after the war. I know.
He was driving in his car, and he said, let me find the quote, 'cause it's quite interesting. He said something about war and like the cost of war. Let me find the quote before I butcher it. He said, accident and death. So he was on a pheasant hunting trip with some other general, and he was looking at derelict cars alongside of the road, and he said, and I quote, "How awful war is. Think of the waste." And then moments after he said that, his car was in a crash with an American army truck at low speed. Everyone else was fine, but he hit his head on some glass, began bleeding, and then he was paralyzed for 12 days, and then he died. And he said that this is a hell of a way to die, and then he died in his sleep. And obviously he wanted to die at war. So I think the ox cart is almost, I don't know why they wouldn't show his death, but I think it's almost a prelude to that.
Actually, I don't know if you noticed, this film has a sequel.
I did know it. It has a
Yeah,
made-for-TV sequel from 1985,
yeah,
which
Last
shows
Days
his
of
actual
Patton.
death.
But I think that's fine. I think
I'm
not.
assuming at the time of this film they didn't know they were making a made-for-TV sequel.
Yeah, no, I was just kidding with that. But I think it works to just allude to, not even allude, just show Patton's impending mortality, and like as the audience, we know that he's not going to die in another war. It's obvious, like even if we didn't know anything about his life, I certainly didn't. That's not going to happen for him.
Yeah,
So just this idea that his death is coming, even if he'd lived till 1970 or whatever, he would still die, and it would
yeah,
not be the glorious death he seeks.
yeah.
Um,
Well, he was. I mean, he died at age 60, so
yeah,
you
quite
have to
young.
think the. I want. It is quite young, but for a soldier, it's quite old. I wonder if he maybe potentially he wanted the war of the Russians because that would be his opportunity to die in battle. I wonder if he was almost disappointed that he didn't get that warrior's death.
Oh well, definitely.
What do you
Regarding the
think?
warrior's death,
Yeah,
I definitely think that's what he wanted. Um, I
yeah.
don't.
So do you think an element of the wanting to go for war with Russia could be that he knows his time's coming and he wants to go out that way
An
potentially?
ele- Definitely an element, but I do also
Yeah.
think that even if he thought he would live forever, he would still do the exact same thing.
Oh, I absolutely. But
Yeah,
I think there's definitely an element of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly the desperation. The final interview with Patton, where he's just sort of wandering around on a horse in front of some reporters in a slow circle,
Hmm.
looking very morose. And they ask him a bunch of questions, baby. One of them is about the fact that Patton hasn't gotten rid of Nazis in the German government yet, at least not all of them, and Patton says that he's not going to do it until they get him replacements. Which again, I think does show Patton's complete disinterest in the political motivations of the war he spent the last 3 years fighting.
Yeah.
Um, and then he says that the Nazi Party is basically the same as the Democrat and Republican parties.
Yeah.
Something which is the final straw. He finally loses favor with Eisenhower, and this is where he's completely tossed out of any sort of army command. The more interesting part of that interview scene, though, is that the reporters talk about how there's going to be wonder weapons. So they're talking about V2s in the interview, but obviously, subtext, it would be nuclear bombs. And Patton says that he hates the idea of wonder weapons, basically, because there's no generals, no heroics. If you're just pressing a button and killing civilians, then there's no honor in battle.
Yeah.
Which I think very much trades into this idea of the film that Patton is sort of the last vestige of a dying era in terms of war. It's a very common theme to these incredibly long epics. I don't know why. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure someone's written a book on it.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, but it's just is what it is. There's obviously a great
It's what
deal
it
of
is.
cynicism at the time towards nuclear war.
Yeah.
It's very rare, obviously, that one chapter in history ends so conclusively as another begins. But obviously, the end of the Second World War very much is that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
bad.
Cool.
Shouldn't have happened. So the final scene is Patton walking his dog Willie in the countryside, and he recalls a Roman general's speech, and he says that a Roman general returned gloriously from battle, but one of the captured men, a slave, whispered in that conqueror's ear that all glory is fleeting,
Yeah.
which is his final note. Just to confirm to anyone who was watching that Patton is not happy. But
Correct.
not enough for Richard Nixon.
Yep. Good.
So that was Patton.
That was Patton.
I don't know if I made it really clear in my plot summary where I was maybe quite mean to Patton as a character, but I really liked it as a film.
Yeah.
Quite is they're definitely not an acquired taste, but these big epics are definitely something where I need to be in a right headspace to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Because they can be quite dry. But I really enjoyed this. I found it quite compelling.
Yeah, I did. I liked the way it kind of put the men that were in charge of the various armies in competition, but yet still showed the battles and stuff. It was kind of a cool mix, interesting mix.
Yeah.
In terms of both generals that were on the same side and how you saw Rommel and stuff. That was cool. Yeah, I liked it overall. How do you feel it compares to the other war films that we've watched?
Vastly better than Too Late the Hero.
Yeah.
Such an extent that comparing them is disgusting. What other war films have we done at this point?
Catch 22.
Oh, it's a lot less cynical than Catch 22. I suppose one thing I was going to mention is that obviously the context of Catch 22 and MASH is that they're war films that are very much more they're very cynical towards war itself. I would actually say that this film is not that.
No,
I don't think one would walk out of that film and think, isn't war terrible? Human suffering. I think all war films are in danger of glorifying war to an extent. I think particularly because this film is filtered through Patton's own viewpoint, which is all about his own glorification of the war he's fighting.
Yeah.
I think that's an inevitable consequence.
And I think also, I mean, it is kind of, he is kind of like the leaders that you see in Catch 22.
Yes.
Very much so.
Very much so, actually.
Yeah.
I think talking about Francis Ford Coppola's work, I think General Patton is very much a template for the character that will become Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. Where it's a film which is much more freely critical of the American military establishment. Same sort of zeal of the drama of it all. The thing is, because watching this film in a historical vacuum, it's a very interesting and quite compelling portrait of a deeply flawed, but also quite brilliant man. But what I keep thinking about it is that it was obviously released in a historical context where America was fighting a deeply unpopular war. That obviously needed, or at least was in dire need of massive public support. And I feel that the fact that a film that was released that so glorifies war, even if it's quite critical, it nonetheless presents a very positive face in the Second World War. I feel it's not a coincidence.
No.
And I also think watching it, if like, I could imagine both a student hippie protester and also an ultra-conservative, like, old businessman watching this film at the time, and both thinking that it was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a film that takes a harsh stance on this issue, which I suspect is why it had so much mainstream appeal at the time. Whereas something like MASH, I suspect that old businessman would have been less happy with.
Yeah. The other war film we watched is The Conformist.
Oh yeah, that's a much better. Actually, it's a very similar film, I suppose, but obviously with much less of a budget.
I can't really remember The Conformist. I feel like I forgot.
You kind of bounced off it. I like The Conformist a lot, and I would say it's probably it is a better film than this. Actually, I'll go that far. Really on a visual level, I think also on a character level.
Right.
Fair
enough.
Although again, they're both portraits of deeply flawed men during wartime. I suppose The Conformist is much harsher to its protagonist, for the very understandable reason that he's a Nazi.
By a lot, yeah.
So I suppose in that way, I'd perhaps find it a more engaging film in a way, because I find, these cinematic explorations of evil perhaps more interesting. But certainly, they're both very successful at what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. You got anything else?
I had a few random thoughts. Oh yeah, another piece of background about this film, which I think is quite important to note, is that it wasn't made with his family's permission, Patton's.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think is kind of weird and disgusting. They tried several times. They couldn't do it while Patton was alive, and then they wanted to do it with getting the rights from his widow, but his widow said no. So they waited until the widow died, and then they immediately moved to try and make it with the rest of his remaining family, and they also said no.
Right.
so they never got access to General Patton's diaries. This is almost all based off of accounts of people around him.
Yeah, I think
Lieutenant Bradley, who was a consultant on the film.
it's based off a couple of biographies as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think one of the interesting things I found about this film is that we very rarely see Patton doing anything other than performing to the people around him in his own way.
Yeah.
Where he says that someone says, the men don't know if you're pretending anymore or not, Patton. He says, it's fine as long as I know.
Yeah.
But obviously we're always seeing Patton from other people's point of view. And part of me was thinking, I think that's probably partly an intentional dramatic choice. But I do also suspect that maybe part of it comes from the fact that obviously the stories we know of Patton are all from other sources because they just didn't have any information about his private life.
Yeah. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Franklin Schaffner. Do you know what else he made?
I don't.
He made Planet of the Apes.
Ah, cool.
And he also made Nicholas and Alexandra, which was another epic. It was produced by Sam Spiegel, who produced a lot of famous.
That's meant to be shit, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was a critical failure. Yeah. And it was produced by Frank McCarthy, who was Secretary of the General Staff of the United States Department of War during the war, and spent 20 years trying to get the film made, as you were saying, with the family and stuff.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say his job was?
He was Secretary of the General Staff of the United States Department of War during World War II.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that sort of ties into what I'm saying. Like, I think you could be a big old fan of war and still very much enjoy this film. I don't necessarily know if that's a strength.
Yeah. He was Frank McCarthy. He became a film producer. He was linked to the army. I don't really know what the Secretary of the General Staff of the United States Department of War does, but it sounds like quite an important role. And then he made a bunch of war films as a producer. So yeah.
Oh, that's right. Right?
Exactly. We've not talked about the person that plays Patton is George C. Scott, who.
Yeah.
Do you know who he was in?
His face looks much more familiar now that I'm seeing a black and white picture of him. Oh,
he was in The Exorcist 3.
In what?
The Exorcist 3.
Oh, right. He was also
he was in 1984's Christmas Carol.
Yes. He was also in Doctor Strange.
He was in Doctor Strangelove.
Which is what I know him from.
Yeah, that was my main one.
This is basically the exact same character, isn't it?
Yeah. Only more crazy. Presumably he was cast in this following how good he was in that. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, he was also in Christmas Carol and The Exorcist 3. So
very, very cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, actually, I suppose. Yeah, you know what? The existence of General Buck Turgidson. Something about that makes me feel better about this film, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just that there's something. I don't know. I have somewhat mixed feelings on this film, and yet I don't. It's strange. I suppose I feel this film does glorify Patton a lot, and but then it doesn't shy away from the flaws. But then I'm like,
Does it sort of make you think that maybe it's a bit more self-aware than it initially seems? If you kind of look at it of the background of him having played the character that's obviously very satirical in Doctor Strangelove, and obviously one would assume quite heavily being cast off of that. Maybe it kind of makes you think a bit more that maybe the film is. I mean, we've never said the film is necessarily glorifying Patton, but maybe it kind of makes you sort of confirms that the film.
It's not. I think the film's
sees him in a certain way.
The film's attitude towards Patton is that it's very critical of him as a person, but is genuinely in awe of his spirit and talent.
Yeah, which I think is fair. I mean, if it's accurate,
that's a fair and like nuanced enough opinion to have. I suppose yeah.
Cool.
That's the opinion. I have mixed feelings. I think you're supposed to have mixed feelings coming away from the film.
What would you rate it?
I'd rate it a buy.
Oh, really? A buy?
Would you not?
Well, I don't know. I was gonna rate it. What seek it out to watch it, but don't pay for it. But now that you're rating it by, I'm thinking, would I rate it a buy actually?
I do not regret the £3.49 I spent on it.
Yeah. Do you know what, Jamie? I'm gonna say buy it as well.
Yeah, look at us agreeing.
But I'm saying buy it with but tentatively. I'm tentatively saying buy it. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm definitely saying if it's available, if it becomes available on Amazon or Netflix or anything, then absolutely watch it.
Yeah.
But do also buy it
Buy
if
Lawrence
you're
of Arabia first if you haven't seen that.
sure.
It is a much
That's
better,
what I should do.
very similar film.
That's what I should do. Um,
Oh yeah, one last thing. This
yeah.
got a nomination for its soundtrack, and I didn't like it that much. I don't get a lot of these films that got big nominations for soundtracks in this time seem to have one really good, perhaps seem to have one big theme tune which they like show again and again. And I don't even
I
like the one big theme tune for this film.
I honestly can't even remember it, so that
Yeah.
shows you. I'm just looking at Frank McCarthy, the producer's movies, or his
Mhm.
films. He also made one about MacArthur, General MacArthur, which is just called MacArthur, and is 2 hours and 10 minutes long. So I wonder if he thought, you know, I wonder if he thought this was so successful that he had to make another one.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how you'd think like this is a replicable success. Oh, just because I did the research,
Yeah.
accidental research, I saw a copy of Mad Magazine that was released the same month as Patton the film, and it had
Right.
a full parody of it as like its comic. And the comics, two jokes that I can see from the pages they'd reprinted and uploaded online were that Patton swore a lot, which he did, and that the film is really boring.
Right.
So if you want to know what the cool, edgy kids thought of Patton at the time, that was it.
Not fan.
Yeah, I think it thought it was a bit dull.
Cool.
But, fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I can see why one might say that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Right.
We done so?
I think we're done here, kiddos. See you
It's
next
very
week.
late.
We'll be back to reviewing films that actually came out that week.
Oh, it's almost 1 a.m. I'm very
We'll be
tired
watching Fellini's made-for-TV documentary about clowns. So enjoy that. Bye.
now. Bye.